Today I am joined by Will, who's the head of SEO content at Pipedrive. So those of you who know me, my friends and family especially, know how much I actually love Pipedrive. And this isn't an episode just about how good Pipedrive's been to me, but it's more about, it's literally one of the tabs that opens up automatically when I actually open my computer. And they're not paying me to say this, by the way. This isn't a paid promotion, which should hopefully be in the future. But Pipedrive is one of these tools that has, I've been using Pipedrive for nearly 4 years now, I think. And someone recommended it and I've never looked back. And it's one of the invoices that I get, which I'm more than happy to pay, because the amount of money Pipedrive has kind of helped me, the return of investment has been just amazing. So usually with guests, we're kind of researching their product and getting to know who they are and what they do. Whereas with Pipedrive, it's something which has got a good place in my heart. I have a soft spot essentially. So welcome to the show, Will.
Thank you very much, Suds.
Thank you for being here. Firstly, tell us about, essentially what you've been with Pipedrive for 4 years now.
Coming on 5, actually.
And you've been in various roles within this company. Can you tell us how you got started with this company, with Pipedrive, and what it's been like seeing the growth from the inside?
Sure, yeah. In that time, we've become a unicorn, which has been fantastic.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And we've, been acquired by a large equity partner firm. So I think quite a lot has changed, but also what I like about Pipedrive is what's important stays the same. So when I joined as just a content editor, I was working for a demand gen team that sort of already at that point knew that SEO was a big part of what we needed to do to grow. It was a team that was connected as well to paid, again, a big part of marketing. But we had such a strong culture at that point, and that's what we've retained through the process, even through, I think 4 or 5 CEOs and other changes at the top level. I think maintaining the right understanding of what makes the company, which is in 2 parts, the people and the product, is what's been important. But yeah, what's changed, I think, things do have to change. Processes is probably the big one. So we were quite scrappy at the start, small teams, trying to move into new markets with a product that was established, but maybe wasn't as well known as it is now. Definitely not as well known as the big players in the market. I mean, we're competing with the likes of HubSpot and Salesforce, which, HubSpot, they're the trailblazers when it comes to content marketing, and Salesforce are the biggest B2B company in the world. So, we had those flags on the top of the mountain to aim for, but we were definitely scrappy at the start, and there was definitely a lot more freedom to try stuff. But with freedom comes, accountability and risk. And I think what we've done now is we've built out these processes that reduce the risk, but still allow for creativity within that, and an understanding that everyone's there to do the job, and everyone's there to do a specific job throughout that process. I mean,
I think, we speak to people who are marketing managers who work for other SaaS companies as well, and essentially, these are one of the things I want to get into later on. You're competing against people who have almost virtually unlimited kind of marketing budgets, and to be able to do that, I guess, when you're starting off as a company, you have to have that element of scrappiness and be able to be, your competitive advantage is being very agile to start with. But as things get formal, as teams become bigger, you're going to have that guidelines in place. But as a consumer, who's been religiously using your product, No, I genuinely mean that. I actually genuinely use Pipedrive every day. One of the things I like is every time you win a deal, there's like animation that comes up. So
Yeah.
I want to meet that man or woman who actually created that one day. So
Is it the basketball animation? That's still
basketball, the snooker. I mean,
snooker, yeah, of course. Yeah.
I win so many deals. I've seen all of them. No, what I mean is, I think the basketball one's pretty fun. But yeah, one day I want to meet this person. So you got to make that happen, Will.
Well, I mean, maybe that's a reference to one of our early investors was Shaquille O'Neal.
If you, wow!
Basketball
player.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so you learn something
bit
every
of
day.
Bit of industry insight there, but I think that's a good thing you mentioned as well, like customer. I mentioned people and product, but I'd say the third pillar, customer. This year especially, we've been looking at how we can do more for the customer, how we can make that moment that you described there extra special. We want them to associate Pipedrive with closing the deal, winning the sale. That's really what our product's about.
From my perspective, it's just super easy to use, and to be honest, I have tried Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, and a few other tools. The thing I like about Pipedrive is literally it's just so easy to use, and it requires the minimum amount of admin if you wish, or you can actually add more things into it. So that's actually one of the things I love about your tool. But without getting too much into it, there are other CRM and sales tools available.
Yeah.
But I happen to be very biased, and Pipedrive has given me an amazing ROI. So, but let's not dwell on that too much. And I don't want to come across as being too much of a fanboy. Otherwise, the people watching this wouldn't get too much value. So, Will, what are the biggest challenges B2B marketers are facing today? Like from what you've seen, and also what your peers have kind of come across.
I mean, where to start? I think you could ask this question of a dozen different content marketers and receive a different answer. I think a lot of the challenges are actually double-edged. So they're challenges and opportunities. AI is a big one. It's going to really fundamentally change the industry. I've talked around the company at Pipedrive, and I think that it could basically completely change the face of SEO in the next 5 years. Whether that's AI search tools competing with Google and Bing, or the landscape of freelancing completely changing as people look to AI solutions. But I think it's a challenge, because if you don't move quickly enough and you don't find what makes this new tool that's available to everyone beneficial, then you'll get left behind. But there's the opportunity there as well, that if you can find how to leverage it for your own gain, then it'd be fantastic. I mean, as well as that, you've got all the macro and micro impacts. We live in a turbulent world right now. The last 3 or 4 years have been really difficult. I'm not saying for content marketers, I'm saying for everyone. So I think finding a way to connect with people in what is constantly becoming, a more, not fractious, but definitely people are finding more of opposing viewpoints out there is very challenging.
There's a few interesting points you made. One thing I want to pick more on is like, when you're facing like a major inflection point, such as the one we're kind of traversing across with AI, I guess. You mentioned moving quickly or being able to adapt really quickly. What advice would you give to someone who's kind of facing these challenges, and how have you kind of clocked on to say, okay, this isn't just a fad, this is here to stay? How did you come to that decision?
So I think you've got to treat it as any other tool, and every tool has two sort of conversation points. It's the people using it and the tool itself. So even though AI is being touted as this, could potentially replace jobs in the future. Actually, it's more about finding a way to empower the individuals within your company, within your team, to use it as best as possible. It's not going to, necessarily not replace people. It's not going to replace people. That's for another conversation I don't think we know the answer to yet. But I think the best action now is to embrace it and try to encourage everyone in your team, whatever role they have, to find a use for it. Because content management is an obvious one, but there's AI being used out there for law, for finance, for design, project management. So pretty much anyone can benefit from it in their day-to-day life. And whether that's the tools out there that people are leveraging the sort of the basic algorithms for, or your ChatGPT interface. There's definitely ways to put the people in front of the tool rather than just think about the tool itself.
Oh, great answer. Going back, to your personal career, you've worn many hats in your career, as many marketers that we've been speaking to have done so as well. One of just glancing on your LinkedIn, you've got content writer, email marketing manager, social media manager. What's been the biggest lessons you've learned from each of your roles?
I think I'm going to start now and move backwards for this question. Certainly something that has been a lesson I've learned this year, more than before. I think I was aware of it before, but it's really come to the forefront this year, is you've got to leave your ego at the door. There are so many ways in which you could do something. And especially if you're a team, everyone will have an opinion, everyone will have a different path to follow. Going back to talking about building out these processes. But the other side of that is, don't be too stuck on your way of doing things. Be open to people's insights from different walks of life, from different careers, from different teams, departments. As soon as ego comes into it, that's when the focus moves away from the task at hand and it moves to the personal relationships, and that's not what you want. You want to give people an environment where they feel that they can give their opinion without there being any discrediting or controversy. So
it's almost like creating an environment where the best idea wins, not necessarily the person who speaks the loudest.
Exactly, yeah. And that best idea, that environment it takes time. So don't think, you're going to hit on it immediately, and you could be the best, person, manager, coach in the world, but without, learning and building and understanding not just sort of the process that has takes nothing into account from a human side, but also the humans you're working with, finding the sort of the influx point of that. I'd say.
I want to do a very conclusive answer. What have you learned about your customers as you've progressed through all these different roles, especially even at Pipedrive?
So I would say, for the most part, they don't really care what you've got to say. You need to really think about how they're going to react to what you're putting out there in the short time that they inevitably have to do it. In Pipedrive, most of our customers are business owners like yourself, salespeople who are short on time. They want the answer soon. They might look further into the content if it engages them, but certainly with the sort of content we try to put out, we're answering questions, we're solving jobs to be done. And then, hopefully we're engaging them enough, or, we're obviously doing a lot to engage them enough to encourage them to take that next step.
Perfect. I think as a business owner, how I, going off script here now, how I kind of discovered, it was someone recommended it, and I think 2-3 people can say, oh, this is a good tool, it kind of fits your what you're looking for. I think I did a trial with 7-day trial or 30-day trial at that time. But essentially, other SaaS users or SaaS marketing managers will probably have the same issue where if you actually get someone through the door and they get a taster of your product, they will more likely stick around. Which is how I got sucked into Pipedrive.
Yeah.
How do you actually get people to give you a chance? Especially if you know your product's great, but it's more like literally getting them through the door, giving them, getting them to try it even if for a few days, and they'll see how great the product is.
So, word of mouth is, when we talk to customers, it's often word of mouth that they mention, and that's always the first touch point, but it's all about, I think, trying to get as many touch points in front of them as possible in as many different channels. So although they may say word of mouth, obviously you then, you did your research, you probably had a look at the knowledge base, you probably read a few articles, you might have watched an academy video. So trying to think about all those connection points as a matrix and looking at the different connections between them and making it as simple as possible, signposting where people can go next throughout that process. I think that's definitely the way that we build up that authority and that relationship with new customers so that they're willing to continue with us.
I think from a layman's perspective and from an actual user perspective, I think it's more like start with a great product to start with, and everything else follows. That's how I kind of see things. And there are a few other tools that I use where it's like, wow, this is just solving all my issues, because they've gone into really good depth of all the issues or problems I'm facing, and they've actually solved it. But it's more like, I guess the biggest challenge for marketers is actually getting me to try it out in the first place, which is another battle in a way. So the next question was actually submitted by someone we have in common. Tom Grizzle, if you're watching, hello. I know that you've been working with Tom for a while. His question is, how are you thinking about the future of content and getting ahead with the looming changes to SERPs?
So I think we've covered this a little bit with AI. But the thing with SERPs is, and the looming changes, as Tom says, Google is they keep their cards close to the chest. So if you have that reactionary mindset, that adaptive mindset, I should say, because you should never react, you should always think and then act. If you've got that adaptive mindset already, because pretty much every content marketer does, because the market changes instantly and irrevocably, then I think you'll be okay. SERPs are going to be changing constantly, but it's going to be in instances rather than a big change. So if you're changing along with those instances, you take every step of the ladder until you get to the top. You might not even realize the journey until you look back and you see what you've managed. So
I completely agree. I think at Interesting Content, what we say to customers, we're not SEO experts, or we're not an authority, but we know just enough to know what will work based on all the videos that we've created. And essentially we just say, create content that's really going to help your customer now and in 6 months or even 12 months or 6 years time, and you can't really go wrong, because the problem's there, but how they discover the issue or how they discover your solution may change. So that's a rule that we use across socials or even written or even things like infographics. No one does infographics these days.
No, they'll come back just like newsletters.
It's like throwback. I completely agree with you. I know we touched on this earlier, but how do you differentiate Pipedrive from your competitors, especially the ones who have very, very big marketing budgets?
Yeah. So I want to go back to something you said where, you have the good product and then everything else will follow. I think that's where you need to start, the product and what it's solving and who that solution is for. So the likes of some of the other CRMs we've mentioned in the space, they might be offering for enterprise customers. They might be saying, we're going to do everything for you from start to finish. They might say, we're the best for people who want to integrate their marketing and their project management. We're the best for people who want to engage their customers and get as much money out of them as possible. What we say is, we're the best for sales teams who are looking to close deals. And it starts from there. So we focus our content marketing around the subjects that we believe that salespeople and people involved in sales, as well as the teams around it who need to interact with sales on a regular basis, we focus our content on subjects that matter to them, and we that goes down all the way through our content process, not just the subject matter, but the tone of voice, the length of the content, the sort of people we bring in to talk to about the industry. So, creating a whole content funnel or marketing funnel that really, really appeals to that specific customer type or customer types by personas that you have. But as well, we look at what our competitors are doing, and we see what works, and we tweak it to our needs.
Hopefully you won't increase my prices, but I don't really see myself going to another CRM just because I've got a legacy of data that I've stored on Pipedrive, and also it doesn't need me to think, learn something new. The heuristics of trying something new. So you've got me for a long time, so not for life.
No.
I think that Will may say something to his account managers, and suddenly my subscription fee goes up. Then I'll know it's because you.
We've got him hook, line, and sinker. Let's bleed him dry.
This guy, he's not going to go anywhere until we get as much money from him as possible. Going back from this, the breadth of your experiences that you've had, not just with Pipedrive, but with other companies you work for. What does content marketing mean to you, and has that evolved over the years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I started, I was in publishing. I was in content marketing in terms of a lot of print. Print media was where I was focused. I was working for an agency that was definitely a leading light at that point, a very established agency, similar to Pipedrive, kind of the first that were doing what they were doing, John Brown. And I was working on print publications for the likes of RBS, a paper manufacturing company, and then I think as soon as I moved into digital, it was like, wow, print is all about exactness. You want everything to be perfect on the page, because if you see that typo, and believe me, you see a lot of typos post final production, it really does jar, and it definitely is something that hits the reader more. Whereas, on digital, not just because you can go in and edit things after the fact, but on digital, I think perfection is less important. I think you need to be confident that what you're doing is going to make an impact without necessarily being perfect. Just trust that you can put something out there and make sure the process covers your back, but you don't want to be checking line item by line item. I'd say perfectionism not as important as I thought it was. That's definitely something I learned. And then writing content that will help people solve for what they need to solve. Before it was more about maybe too much on the entertainment side, and you connect with people that way, but that you're not helping them get to the next stage, and at the next stage you can engage them again. So
it's almost like getting whoever's reading or watching or engaging with your content the answers that they're looking for straight away, rather than having to kind of add. Because if someone's wanting to read a piece of fiction or something entertaining, they'll go and read a book.
Yeah, exactly. And by all means, this is definitely industry specific. I mean, there are probably industries out there where especially B2C, where actually you do want to entertain, that should be your first thought. But in the space I work in, because as I mentioned, the timelines that people are working on, the customers, the prospects we're trying to engage, it's all about giving them the information that they want and they need.
At the point of need. So this is November 2023, I think, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. I don't know when this is probably going to be out in January, February. But there is a massive Pipedrive campaign on the tubes.
There is, yeah. We're out of home. It's very exciting.
That leads me to this question. I'm on the Jubilee line, so I actually read through your Pipedrive, kind of see the materials every day. What is your brand voice, and how do you maintain it across different kind of mediums? You mentioned social, you mentioned SEO, now you have out of home. How do you actually make sure that everything's consistent?
Yeah.
Internally.
So I think it's all about the structure of the team. We've got a great design team, and they don't just encompass the design, they also encompass the copy, the localization, the internationalization. It's a sort of a process that was built out last year and the year before to have this dedicated team that ensured that every point of that funnel from your out-of-home brand awareness all the way to when you close your first deal feels like a synergistic and a synergistic through line. I'd say trusting the people in that team to do it has been great, and we just make sure that we're working with them throughout that entire process to say, this is how we're working. Is it right for you? This is what we need to do, because not always, SEO won't always align with what's needed from a brand perspective. So just maintaining that communication and trusting to the process, I think.
Going back to what you said earlier, you mentioned when you had initially started with Pipedrive, you were, it was there were a lot of freedom, and I guess by that what I took away was there was no kind of, I don't know if you had a very, very strict brand guideline or brand voice.
Yeah.
So was there a moment where you had a brand manager or someone who's kind of overseeing this, saying, okay, these are the key messages and these are the things that we're going to say across all the mediums that we kind of channel our content in? When that document or that kind of process happened, did you feel like you had to kind of change your...
No, so you're right. I think at the start we didn't really have that clear brand guidelines, but everyone kind of knew what the brand meant and what we spoke for and who we spoke to and how we spoke to them. So it was more about codifying that, and that process wasn't someone came in and top down. It was more everyone around the business did their job, and it all connected up into the right method. We had an agency come in, and that was very instrumental. But really, they were just explaining what was already known around the business, and it starts from the hiring. Our hiring process is really good. We're always bringing in people who are very professional, very passionate, and they just be themselves. And the way that they talk is the way that we try to talk to customers, and it's the way that customers talk themselves more often than not.
Cool. I want to go back to these are the kind of issues that a lot of marketing managers that we speak to face. What parts of the marketing funnel are keeping you awake at night?
So the out-of-home campaign has been a big one. I think getting people to try the products, as you mentioned before, is the hardest thing. We know we've got a great product. We know we're doing something that our competitors aren't doing. We know we're, solving the problems that our buyer personas have, but getting them to try it, getting them to then stay with it, that's the real challenge. And there's a lot you can do, but I think that's definitely one of the biggest changes in the last 5 years probably, is that every single person out there is way more informed. They know what they want. They've done their research. They're looking at 5 to 10. I mean, you said it yourself, you were looking at a number of different competitors. They probably trial a few. They're always narrowing down. Even though they're short on time, they know that they need to make the right decision. So, yeah, I think the biggest challenge has been just getting that every prospect over that final hurdle.
So I guess, if you were to specifically go into, like you've got a great brand awareness and like pushing people down the funnel, like, are there any, what does the funnel look like without going into too much commercial sensitive details?
Yeah, sure. So, you've got your brand, we've got our brand team, doing some great out-of-home stuff, doing some great digital stuff. Alongside that, we've also got awareness from our social, our paid team. We do a bit as well. From a content perspective, we're trying to be at every stage of that funnel. So the awareness stage, we're supporting the brand team where necessary. We're also doing our own, what is sales, like level of awareness content. And then you've got your consideration. So again, search is a big part of that, as is paid social. But this is, as I mentioned, like really where we need to engage people and put Pipedrive's solution forefront, but without really exhausting people with the amount of information there. So from a content point of view, you've got comparison pages, case studies are a big one. You've done a great case study with us, thanks for that. And then conversion. So not just getting people to sign up or run a demo, but also getting them to finally become a customer at the end of that process. And that's the challenging part. That's where a lot of the content that we do, because we're search focused, becomes more and more niche and specialized. People are still searching for, like, how can I use Pipedrive in this way? So we've got a strong learning team that are producing video and written content to solve that problem, and a community that any Pipedriver can join to find answers there as well. So yeah, I'd say content. I think this might be a question on your list actually. Content marketing. I think people often think it's just a couple of stages in the funnel, but actually it's every written word throughout that funnel that people engage with, all the way through to upselling and cross-selling and win back.
I mean, this is something I kind of had to teach myself whilst running interesting content. If you were to really think about what kind of content you're creating versus where you're struggling with buyer personas, the issue that I kind of see a lot of companies have is they kind of over-emphasize on top of funnel content and not enough on conversion or maybe bottom funnel content where I know this is a great product, but get me over the line. Yeah, that kind of thing. So that's something I've been working with a lot of marketing managers, and this is the issue that a lot of your peers have. How many buyer personas are you juggling with, and what advice would you give to fellow marketing managers who want to have a set number of buyer personas?
So we've got sort of two categories. We've got the buyer personas and then we've got the ideal customers. So, and they're very similar, but there's that sort of like consumer customer question. So the buyer personas may well be the sort of customers that are actually looking for the tool, and then buyer personas may be those people who are using it. So there's your first distinction. I think across the two categories, I think we've got about 8 off the top of my head, and those buyer personas are essentially, you want to keep it as simple as possible. You want to try to keep it to to your core audience, and focus on those people who are going to be actually making the decision to bring your tool on, or those who are very, very close to bringing all the information to that decision maker. So yeah, it very much focuses on the salespeople, the business owners, because business owners are a big part of our customer base, and those in even the financial operationals aspects who are actually signing on the dotted line.
I know you may not be able to answer, but do you have a favorite buyer persona?
I don't think. I think as soon as you have a favorite, then you might neglect the rest, right? It's like, who's your favorite child? So
I mean, I have a favorite buyer persona, but I'll take money from anyone, to be honest. I'm joking. I think again, this is whilst running interesting content, I had no idea. I had a kind of inkling for who are we targeting. Versus when you go into that level of buyer persona, it's a whole different, it kind of opened up our eyes to the spectrum of customers that we're kind of talking to. There was a buyer persona workshop I went to, and it really kind of changed my perspective on things. So buyer persona, if you're struggling with it, then please, there's so many good resources out there.
Google Pipedrive buyer persona.
Google Pipedrive buyer persona. You will get an insight into what it's like. Going back to the funnel, this is often a stage of the funnel that doesn't often get talked about. I guess once you've got your customer through the door and they have bought your product, how do you create your product customers? How do you make your customers into advocates? You mentioned word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth people. I mean, to be honest, the product does most of the heavy lifting there. But as soon as I think. Part of it is as soon as you do find an engaged customer, and they're very few and far between, UGC, it's kind of the bane of my life because, I completely understand this, most customers would rather remain anonymous, they don't necessarily want to share their stories. So you have to really find a quid pro quo, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Solution that's going to keep everyone happy, and just try and maintain that relationship. You've been really great for us. I think you've done as much for Pipedrive as we've done for you, for sure. You've offered a great case study. You've been part of the video branding campaign. And now this. Just finding ways to be mutually beneficial. Treating your customer as not just a customer, but also an influencer, a font of knowledge themselves, a thought leader. Most of our customers have really, really strong insights into their industries, into what it's like to be a salesperson and business owner, and trying to, leverage that in a way that's less we want content and more we want to hear from you. I think that's the best solution.
No, I remember your members of your team got in touch to say, we're going to do a case study, or if you'd like to submit a video. What I really loved about this was, I get approached from, I'm sure everyone does, where people are, hey, tell us what it's been like to work with our company, or what's been the experience. Whereas I think the messaging I got from your team was, it was actually quite genuine, and it was more like, tell us what you faced as a company, your experience of using Pipedrive. And I was more than happy to participate because, the approach that you took was very, it kind of fitted in with myself and also my use of your product, so that was really apt. And I think the campaign that you created around the case studies, and I glanced at a few others that you've got on your website, was really kind of very it really kind of resonated with me. I think that was the word I was looking for. So away from all of this, what are some of the? So actually, these are questions that we've been asking all our guests.
Yeah. They're not from Tom, are they?
Usually. Tom,
yeah.
But Tom actually had a very controversial question. So.
Oh, okay.
Answer to this question. So, 3 must-read books.
Okay, so I'm not much of a reader when it comes to the industry. I've actually read more sales books than I've read marketing books. just because, it's given me an insight into what the customer thinks. But I'd say I've got a background in creative writing. That's what I studied at university.
You must have read a lot of books in your...
I've read a lot of books. Yeah, I've read a lot of books. But I'm going to maybe go for 3 from different walks of life that I think a must read, not because they're going to make you an amazing... they're not going to give you necessarily the blueprints of being a great content writer. They're going to... or content marketer. They're just going to flesh out little areas that you maybe didn't think of were necessary, and maybe make you think in a new way. So from the sales perspective, the Introvert's Edge, Matthew Pollard. I'm not much of an introvert. In business, I'm a bit introverted, I'd say. I don't put my sort of professional self out there as much. But it was a really good insight into how you can overcome, a fundamental challenge that you face in yourself in order to actually, be a benefit. As I said before, there's double-edged swords to everything. How do you make a challenge an opportunity? Something I read at university, so all the way back, but I have reread it, Why I Write by George Orwell.
Okay.
It's a really good insight into writing and, the process of writing, the thinking that you should be doing around the writing rather than actually putting pen to paper. And a bit of a left field one, All the President's Men. It's about the Watergate scandal.
Yeah.
The film is based on this. It's by the 2 journalists that sort of uncovered it. And if you're a writer, it's just a really interesting insight into the process of really digging down into the truth. And even though writing a blog article isn't necessarily about winning a Pulitzer Prize, you should always be trying to find that truth and trying to, delve into exactly what is important about what you're trying to say.
Well, I mean, 3 unique books, actually.
What did Tom say? So I suppose people will say it.
You've got to watch his episode.
Yeah, watch his episode.
We don't want to give any spoilers away.
Yeah.
But Tom, there was one book he mentioned which has been a favorite for a lot of marketing managers I spoke to, and he said that he hated it. So,
Interesting.
You've got to watch Tom's episode for that, so to find out, what exactly are his preferences. Maybe Tom is out, maybe he's not, who knows. 3 SaaS tools that you cannot live without.
So, it's a good one. Pipedrive. No, I tell you what, I'm gonna move Pipedrive aside for this one.
I was gonna say you cannot say your own.
Yeah. We do use Pipedrive internally though, which is good even for content marketing. But the three I use, I think, or the 3 I'm going to mention, ClearScope. It's just a good little tool to manage your content creation. It makes you think about what your competitors are doing without having to read every article, but also helps you find a new angle on what you're writing about. So that'd be one. Tom uses that one as well, actually. So he and I have talked about it quite frequently. SEMrush, I use it day in, day out. It's hugely useful for me. I think, with every tool though, you don't want to have one source of truth. You don't want to be checking it against... Balance things out, yeah. We actually got pitched to by a competitor, or a slight competitor of theirs recently, and they had more sources of information. So as well as your Google data, it was pulling data from other sources as well, but you couldn't tell how it was weighting the data. Which put me off. Whereas, by having these 2 sources, we use SEMrush, Hrefs, another tool, to look into the figures. We can see if there are any discrepancies. Maybe one will suddenly jump up. We can check the other one. Just making sure, obviously everyone's on a budget, but if you can have more than one tool that has some crossover in functionality, that can be hugely beneficial. And then lastly, another classic, Grammarly.
Grammarly, oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, I tell you what, with Grammarly, I used to really dislike it because it actually wasn't that grammatically accurate. And this is even like 3-4 years ago. And it still makes some pretty basic errors, don't get me wrong. But their functionality for teams who are trying to follow the same guidelines is great. It pops up in like our CMS, it pops up in Google Docs. You know, it'll say, oh, actually, within your content guidelines that you've created, this is how you should be writing it, which is hugely useful for a team that has, you know, many different content copywriters, all of whom have a lot to do and can't always be cross-checking each other's work.
Also, you have quite an international team as well. I think you have team members in Estonia.
Yeah, that's our home office.
Yeah. Funny story is actually I met. So I've been, you know, I went to a trade show here in London, and I just walked past and I like did a double take. I was like, "Whoa, Pipedrive!" And I went to your PR person, and they said, "Oh, yeah, too." And they were just. I was genuinely just happy to just say hello to people I've been kind of tools I've been using. And I was genuinely, you know, I think they were quite genuinely taken aback with my enthusiasm. They were like,
yeah.
We're gonna here's some swag, here's some.
You can always take Estonians back with enthusiasm. There.
I one day want to meet. Well, one day I want to meet the person who's the animation for the basketball.
Yeah.
And two is go to Estonia, and I can see your headquarters.
Oh yeah, they're great. I mean, they've got some real lovely mod cons there. They've got a sauna.
Oh.
Yeah.
At the actual office.
At the actual office. I mean, Estonia is very much.
Book the flight now.
Yeah. It's very much a Nordic country in that they've got saunas in a lot of places. Yeah, a lot of apartments, houses.
It's like, I mean, I guess it's cold, so they kind of.
Oh yeah, it's cold. Yeah. And we've got some offices all over actually: London, New York, St. Pete in Florida, Lisbon, Prague. Berlin.
I follow your LinkedIn, and you know, I think when you have the team get-togethers, it's actually quite. You know, you see all these different locations, so that's quite really nice to see. And it seems like you have a lot of fun behind the scenes, as much as you know the content that you're putting out there. Another thing we've got to pay the bills here at Zero Calorie Marketing. You know, we are in an office where you know this wall surface isn't even flat. If anyone from ClearScore, SEMrush, or Grammarly is watching, we are looking for sponsors, so please get in touch. And what great word of mouth has already been spoken, so that's something for us to do. Who are some of the people that you follow? I know this is a question that we've kind of spoken about just before we got on. The reason why we ask is not necessarily on social, which I know that you don't really kind of go on, because I guess you spend so much time on it during work.
Yeah.
What I want to ask you is like, you know, who do you look into for inspiration, or are there any other companies that you kind of follow just to kind of get some ideas or?
It's a tough one. I mean, the thing is, I'll just be shouting out my competitors, so I want to try and avoid that. I'm trying to think who out there does interesting content without crossing over with what we're doing. I think there's still a lot we can learn from like B2C content marketing campaigns. There's some really interesting stuff, you know, in the lead up to Christmas that always comes out.
All
the Christmas ads come out, and even though it is quite distant from what we're doing, I think it gives a really interesting point of difference between them. So you know, if I watch the John Lewis ad, then I watch the M&S ad, I will watch the Tesco Aldi ad to see, you know, how they are tweaking their messaging, what their theme is that they think is going to connect with their actual audience. And then, a lot of that sort of competitor, not our competitors, but sort of to competitor content, you know, gives a real insight into how you can slightly tweak something to engage exactly who you want to engage.
No, it's interesting because that's a lot of the times you know, one of the great things about meeting marketing managers is that, you know, you get to actually see things from their perspective, and a lot of the times I come across a piece of content, I'm like, oh, that's really great. We can actually apply that to what we're doing. So I completely identify with you. Going towards wrapping up, what advice would you give to fellow marketing managers who are in the same position as you, apart from obviously going to work for Pipedrive or join the team?
I think a lot of the advice I'd give we've touched on already. So leave ego at the door. Find a way to be mutually beneficial with the people you work with. Whether that's customers, prospects, thought leaders. Be adaptive but not reactive. I'd say. Just try and think first what your customer wants. We're Pipedrive. We want to drive business growth for our customers because we know that's going to drive growth for us. So do what will work for your audience, and it will come back and benefit you.
Perfect. I think this is a common theme that we've kind of noticed with other marketing professionals that we've been speaking to, where if you put your customers' needs and wants and problems first, then that's your playbook for marketing, essentially. Any final words you want to leave us with?
I'd say just thank you very much for having me on.
No,
it's been a pleasure. This is my first ever podcast recording, so I hope I did okay.
I know that you mentioned this, and when I spoke to it with Tom, who you've known for a while.
He's very polished, Tom. So don't put me after him because I'll look terrible.
He approaches this from a completely different perspective, and the kind of questions that we covered with him were from more of an agency owner,
of course,
marketing, rather than the how he makes the sausages for companies like yourself, and get into that. Last thing, how can people get hold of you if they wanted to reach out?
So just find me on LinkedIn, William Sigsworth. You'll find me. Sigsworth. Yes.
Name.
Yes.
So there's only one Will out there. Will, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
And also, Pipedrive team. I'm literally a fanboy. Okay, and it's one of the 4 tabs that I have open that automatically comes up on my Chrome tab, and I've just been. It's just been really great for me. And that's what I want to say. There are so many other tools out there that you can kind of take part, watch and kind of engage with, but it was just so much easier for me, and it just really did the job I asked it to do. So cannot recommend it enough. Thank you again, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode next week, or maybe if this is already out in batches, just click on the next one. Give us a review, like it on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, wherever we are, and see you soon.